Hello, and welcome to another live stream. Today is Monday, and we are going to be doing some Call of Cthulhu. Just kidding. I mean, Cthulhu Confidential. A little bit of game overview, a little bit of live play, and a few other things. Obviously, we're starting this live stream with Mike being a little bit discombobulated. I saw a ghost or something right before right before we came live, so I don't know what's going on, but that's okay. So today we're going to be playing Cthulhu Confidential. I'm really kind of excited about this because it's kind of a like an investigation game using the gumshoe system, and we'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. But it's also a noir detective type setting, and it's perfect for two people. So Brent, what about you? Are you much of a detective noir type?
Not really. I have played in a Call of Cthulhu game before as a detective.
Yeah,
And then I played the detective in our Monster of the Week game. So I
true.
guess I'm an expert, I guess is what I'm saying now.
You got a black belt in detectivism.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, I mean, as long as you're ready, I guess. I mean,
As ready as any person who plays role-playing games the way that I do play is ready for anything.
it's, ooh, mm.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that there's a little something to be said, that like because I'm not going to say I'm like the biggest detective story follower, movie watcher, or anything like that. But I always liked the like images that detective stories kind of evoke. I like mysteries themselves. And because it's just me and Brent right now, I thought this would be a perfect time to bust out the Cthulhu Confidential. Honestly, I was actually going through my 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 memories here a little bit. I was like, what detective movies have I actually watched from this era, this 1930s era? And I came up and I was like, I don't think I have watched any. I've just watched the stuff that came from it.
Mhm.
Like, you know,
Roger Rabbit came up as a detective story, ladies and gentlemen.
that's about it. Roger Rabbit. That's as far as my detective noir from the 1930 goes. I do know the names, like I've heard of Humphrey Bogart.
I guess one of the kind of a hard-boiled supernatural detective story I watched is I have watched one of my favorite movies is the movie Angel Heart, and the book was really good, which is a
Mhm,
kind of a hard-boiled supernatural detective story.
mhm.
Um, and that's really good. So I guess I have that going for me.
That's like Mickey Rooney, right? Not
No, it's
Mickey
not me.
Rooney.
It's not Mickey
Mickey
Rooney. No, Mickey Rourke. Yes,
Mickey
not
Rourke.
not Mickey
Ah,
Rooney. Mickey Rooney would have made the movie completely different.
um, I was like so close. I got Mickey R, and then I just rocketed off a cliff. Oh
Mickey
man.
Rooney.
Well, at least you're welcome. I guess you're welcome.
That's very good. That was very good.
Yeah.
I'll try and not think of that every time I watch that movie again now.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I gave you something from this. So welcome. I hope everybody that enjoys these kind of these kind of games and everything like that, and of course our actual plays, enjoys our playthrough of the investigation called the Fathomless Sleep. Um,
So,
so
so a question about Cthulhu Confidential.
mhm.
Is Cthulhu Confidential a solo game, like as in one person supposed to be playing, or is it supposed to be a duet game where it's one GM and one player?
Well, so it's a one-on-one game. So,
Okay.
and I'll kind of explain my understanding of it is that so it's first of all, I'll just kind of give the overview of what it is, and then we'll talk about the other parts in just a second here. But in case nobody's heard of Cthulhu Confidential at all, it's like focuses on detectives of the hard-boiled crime area, probe beyond guns, mobsters, and corruption to even darker mysteries, those involving the appalling creatures and the insane deities of H.P. Lovecraft's tales of cosmic horror. Now, what it does do is it takes the Trail of Cthulhu role-playing game and the gumshoe system, which is what it uses to kind of play with normally multiple investigators, and because it's a mysteries and investigations thing, it actually changes the mechanics behind it to make it so that they call it gumshoe 1-to-1. It's literally one game master and one player is the target audience for this game.
Right.
There's a there, I mean, it's not really a solo game because it doesn't include any kind of like GM emulation or anything like that. However, as with anything, you can probably turn it solo somehow.
Right. I was just curious because this will be the first time I've ever played a game that's specifically designed for
Hmm.
just one-on-one sort of thing. So, and
Yeah.
it seems like the gumshoe rules have been used for that, like because the Black Agents has their solo
Hmm.
operations one, which is
Hmm.
also gumshoe. So it seems like it's something that they've been trying to kind of do, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, and it's nice because I think that, I think we had talked about this before, how it's like, well, why aren't more games one on one? Well, I don't know. I mean, it's first of all, the mechanics maybe are much more lenient when you have a bigger group. It's harder to kill your players in D&D if you have four of them as opposed to one.
Mhm.
It just like everything scales differently with the number of players that you have. But needless to say, in the one-to-one, it really embraces that like solo protagonist approach to how they want the game to be played. And you'll see kind of how that presents itself in terms of like the mechanics themselves. And like, for example, you have to imagine this kind of like a movie. And in the movie, your character isn't going to die, like, not, at least not to the very end, right? You have to be able to make it at least to the end of the story. So with that in mind, the game doesn't really, it's not really focused on like combat to kill your character. So like in D&D, you walk into the dungeon and you run into a group of goblins, and that group of goblins can skewer you with a stick, and that's the end of your adventuring career. In Gumshoe, you're more likely to make it, even though you may gain more and more negative traits as you go, until the very end of the adventure. You may succumb to your wounds in a
In
heroic
Gumshoe
fashion.
or specifically in Cthulhu Confidential?
And Cthulhu Confidential.
Right, because Gumshoe is more of a general rule
Yeah,
system.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in the Gumshoe system, it's I mean, it's more based on investigation too, so it's not really designed for hack and slash goblin killing. But
No, but there is quite a bit of combat in Knights
mhm,
Black Agents and stuff like that. It's
mhm.
just more. It's a little bit different. Yeah.
Yep, yep, yeah, and maybe it would be actually interesting to play that as well to see how that game changes. From like a special operations versus a hard-boiled detective game. I'd be curious, actually, now that I think about it. So in case anybody's wondering, this game was written by Robin D. Laws, and that name should be familiar to a lot of people. Been in the industry for quite a long time. But this was actually written and published by Pelgrane Press back in 2017. So I don't think I've ever played Gumshoe or Trails of Cthulhu, at least not that I was made aware of that I was playing those. So, but you've never played them either, right?
No, no, I've never used the Gumshoe system. I've read about a little bit about it from in Knights Black Agents, but
Hmm.
not. I've never played it, and I'm not that familiar with the rule set. So
Okay. So, so basically, kind of getting into where we're playing now. So the setting of this is going to be kind of a hard boiled LA. Now, what I'd have to say is that there's a fairly long exposition card that they use to say like this is kind of the description of the setting that is LA. I kind of boiled that down to a little bit shorter just to kind of give you a high level feel as to what you're stepping into when you're getting into the investigation here. But this is how it starts. Los Angeles, 1937. Beneath the beguiling service's corruption rules. Dig down past that seething layer of human indifference, and the one obsessed enough to keep looking finds a deeper, occulted indifference of cosmic proportions. That obsession belongs to you, a private detective, witness to a coming reckoning. You will walk down insane avenues and hope not to go insane yourself. Now, this is the when this talks about the LA time frame. This is actually set in 1937. It doesn't give you like a specific date. So, Brent, if you want to choose a specific date in 1937 to start your investigation, that's fine. You can choose a date.
I don't think that's important.
But you do get a kind of a sense of identity about LA, is that the game actually tries to blend real history and adds a dabble of the occult to it, so it makes it kind of like realistically plausible that those kind of things are happening. So as you play through the game, you actually may experience encounters with people that are actual real individuals in history, but maybe with a twist kind of thing. So it does talk about how Los Angeles grew, kind of it boomed, from a city of less than 500,000 to a city of multi-millions. And then of course when the Depression hit, organized crime, gangsters, and everything like that, kind of the seedy underbelly just really entrenched itself. And so it's really interesting to kind of get the idea that you're playing in a place that is recovering from the Depression, sort of. It's like it's past the worst of it, I would say. But obviously, Los Angeles earned the name, the suicide capital of the world, because all those people that came for that bigger, brighter, better life, when everything kind of fell out from under it, banks died, property values cratered, and all that stuff. A lot of people were left with nothing, except taking that last step, I guess. And so this is a good point to talk about trigger warnings in terms of this game. Now, the one thing I would probably say is that Cthulhu Confidential, because it's a one-on-one gaming experience, is probably a really good game to, if you haven't played a lot with a person, to discuss lines, veils, and all those kind of things, because the hard-boiled detective noir world seems to be, sexy, violent, and, a few other things that could possibly be things that people don't necessarily want to.
Mm.
Now, I know with me and Brent on stream here, we're not going to get too racy.
Maybe.
But I would say that obviously the game is designed for adults that want to have whatever kind of fun they want to. But if you try to force a certain type of gaming scenario onto someone, they may not want to. You might have to either put that behind a veil, or you just may exclude that type of thing entirely.
And it also is a Cthulhu Mythos game, so there might be body horror and existential issues and things like that come up as well. So that's something to pay attention to if it's not something that you're curious about.
Yeah. I mean, those are perfect kind of examples, because some people deal with it better than others. And when you're in a one-on-one setting, it's like you don't have the ability just to kind of step back from the action and let somebody else kind of get you through a scene or anything like that, because you're it. It's just you and the GM.
So as a social game, it's especially important to discuss the player that you're going to be playing with, and making sure that you're aware of anything that may be triggering, or make sure that you have a good system for them being able to communicate if they're having a problem.
So I think that's pretty good. So of course, and if anybody has any experience playing with this kind of game, let us know, comments or in chat. That's perfectly fine. So the one thing that I really like about this game is that even though the book itself is like 300 plus pages or whatever it is, I don't know if it's 300 plus, maybe close to 300 pages, but it does present a quick reference. The quick reference is just simply one page for you to go through. And I'm going to kind of cover it right now with you, Brent, just so you kind of at least have a baseline for the game, just to kind of understand, so that even though I explain it now, maybe a little bit gets in, maybe not, maybe all of it gets in, who cares? We'll re-explain it when we come to those things later. But I think it's really helpful to discuss this ahead of time, just so that you could start getting in the mindset like right away for it. Because as we discussed off stream, I really feel like this game could suffer from the GM gets most of the screen time problem if you're not prepared to like understand your abilities, or you get confused or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So the in-depth rules are obviously in the book. So if you want to go in deeper on any of these particular issues, of course you can go in with those, no problem. So the first thing is that your character attempts actions in the storyline by using abilities. Now, I have a whiteboard here. I'm going to share so that people can see Dex Raymond, the character that we'll be playing here, so that you can do like a quick, so you guys can see kind of what we're looking at here. And so here we are. So you have two types of abilities. You have investigative abilities, which are these ones on the left, and they have like cognitive, interpersonal, and like little icons that kind of categorize what they fall into. But as you notice, that none of these abilities have any type of score to them. They just exist as part of your character. Now, the important part about Gumshoe is that failing to get key information is never interesting. I mean,
right.
We know from experience that if there's a gated piece of information and it becomes impossible for that character to get it and it helps progress the story, you could really run into some major roadblocks if they don't have the ability to get it. Or they may not even solve the mystery. That could be another downer right there. But if you have the right ability and you look in the right place for clues you need to solve the mystery, you always find the information that you seek. So what that means is that if you have one of these abilities, you don't have to like roll to, you don't have to roll to collect evidence. you can just use that. And I'll kind of explain here just using this accounting and everything like that. So, and like to expand on what that ability means is that you understand bookkeeping and accountancy procedures. You can read and keep financial records, and you can tell legitimate businesses from criminal enterprises. You can reconstruct financial histories from old records. You can spot telltale signs of embezzlement, bribes, blackmail, or dummy companies. And you can reel off the latest rumors from the world of business, finance, and industry. And you can track payments to their source. So I don't know about you, but when I first read accounting, I didn't really get at least those last couple bullets, like rumors of the business world.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, it's not the first thing you're going to think of.
It isn't the first thing you're going to think of. And each of these abilities has kind of a more elaborate thing that you might expect. So it is important to note, like when you want to investigate something using accounting, that it may be able to reveal more than just do their books add up or something like that.
What do the icons mean?
Oh, the different icons. Like I said, they mean basically their interpersonal knowledge. What was the other one?
But do they indicate like a situation to use it? Is that what they're indicative of? Or
yeah, they would be like interpersonal. You wouldn't. I guess you could use it to indicate what it's going to do. I think they're just mostly icons, from my understanding, to basically say like, these icons are saying this is when you would like. How do I say it? Of course, my brain isn't working because I'm looking.
Yeah, the situation that they apply to.
Yeah, the situation they're more often going to apply to is going to be like an interpersonal situation. So like assess honesty, you wouldn't be able to assess honesty on a piece of paper. Or you also can't assess honesty over the phone because you need to be person to person to be able to use that skill.
Oh, okay. So the book is like knowledge, like investigation, like a knowledge thing. Like law would be like knowing laws and what applies and stuff like that. Whereas like assess honesty is person to person, and then evidence collection is on like it's like a mechanical system. Like
yeah. So here's the actual one. So accounting is academic, assess honesty is interpersonal, and evidence collection are examples of technical.
Okay.
Now, that even though that's categorized those ways, obviously this game is more of a yes and kind of system rather than a no, you can't do it. So you use it as you see fit and see if there's a way for it to apply.
Yeah, but it gives you a baseline of what situations, like that gives you a pretty good idea of like knowledge stuff versus like working with another person versus working with things.
Yep. And then the general abilities, I think those we'll cover in just a moment. It's really important to talk about your sources right now. So the sources are really important because, what the sources are is because it's a one-on-one type of game. The source is actually a way for you to have like a more complete approach to solving the investigation. So rather than just you existing within a vacuum, your investigator knows people that kind of fill in the gaps that your character doesn't have. So for example, just looking at Virginia Ashbury, she has astronomy, biology, chemistry, forensics, and geology. Those are none of those investigative skills you have. So if you run into a situation where you find a piece of evidence that requires you to, say, look up chemistry or forensics, you could take it to your source to have them further help you identify what possible clues this evidence could provide. So it's just the way that they make it so that you don't have a party system to worry about, but you just have access to those those abilities should you need them.
They're extensions of your knowledge skills, basically. You can go to them, like you can do an action, like say collect evidence, and then take that evidence to Virginia and have her actually examine the evidence for you.
Correct. Yeah. And then of course, and that would help you decipher a possible clue to make sure that whatever it is.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing that is interesting about the Gumshoe system is that there's going to be information that's presented to you that is not critical for the case, and you will get it with no chance of failure. So as you're gaining these clues and everything like that, your abilities to investigate will provide you with additional information. And so this is actually going to kind of focus on your ability to sort the important from the tangential and everything like that, just so that if you run into a situation where I'm like, nod, 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 wink, wink, this is important info, you don't just kind of feel led by having only important clues ever given to you, right? So I think that's really important to know that clues will be mixed in. It's your job to kind of decipher the important ones from the nod.
I look forward to going down wild goose chases.
It's possible. It's LA, 1930s. You got plenty of opportunities here. Now, this is an interesting thing that is part of the game, is that in some situations you can spend a resource called a push to gain an additional benefit. Now, this might be information that you don't absolutely need to solve the case. More often it consists of advantages that clear the character's path through the story, such as favors from witnesses, knowledge that keeps characters safe, or prior relationships with center figures. Now, in this particular game, pushes, what you're going to do is that you're going to have those investigative abilities that will give you some guidance, but there may be situations in which you want to possibly use a push to gain additional insight beyond that. And so I'll give an example, is that if you use assess honesty on someone to because like assess honesty, you're going to kind of know someone's being cagey, like right out of the gate or something like that. But you can spend a push on assess honesty to go, why are they being so cagey or being deceptive? And you can kind of start to put together a reason as to why they might be. They might be secret Cthulhu cultist, which is why they're cagey. So, something like that.
Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah. Not to give you an impression that that's what's going to happen. I'm just letting you know that that's a possibility.
It could happen.
Then you have your general abilities. So your general abilities are the second column over. And they determine whether you succeed or fail when trying to take actions other than gathering information. So this is where you start to get into the tests. You have two types of tests. You have a challenge and you have a quick test. Now, the challenge is going to be the one that has the important consequences. And so you either have one or two dice, and that's kind of what it denotes next to the ability. And when I ask for a challenge, basically you roll your D6. And in this case, everybody that watches knows that we roll offline. We don't have a very fancy streamer setup or anything like that, so you can see Brent's rolls. But basically, you're going to roll one dice at a time, and you're going to tell us, tell as you proceed what your number is. So if the test has an advance, basically, let's say there's a test that has an advance, and you have to roll a 6+. And you have two dice, if you roll a 6 on that first dice, you automatically get the best result, which is an advance. And usually an advance gives you an edge or something like that will help you beyond this test. If you get less than an advance, but it's still a success, it's called a hold. It's an okay or a middling result. And then if there is a bad result, there's actually a setback. So if you roll too low on that, you can actually kind of like have a negative, something negative or a problem that's assigned to you that you carry forward.
So you roll one dice
at a time.
Any skill that has two dice, you roll one first and then roll the other if you don't make a 6.
Yeah. So if you don't make the advance with your first dice, then you roll again with the second dice to see if you beat it or get a hold. Now, if
is that second dice added to the first dice?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's additive, and there are situations in which you can add edge or something like that. But the benefit by rolling one dice is that if you have two dice, for example, and you reach an advance without using that second dice, you actually gain a push that you can use later down the roll. road. So there is a bit of momentum that's built that you can do it. Now, there is also, if you really want to succeed at something, you can take on a problem. So, if you want to try to get the advance because you really need something to happen in a specific test, you can take on a problem automatically to gain an extra dice. So, so you could get a problem, but typically if you just take the setback, you also get a problem. So it's kind of up to you how you want to do it. But if you rolled 3 ones, you could get 2 problems potentially out of a certain challenge.
I look forward to that.
And then there's every so often you'll run into what's called a quick test to see if you succeed or fail. It doesn't have any advances, edges, or setbacks or problems that are associated with it. It's just basically like it'll tell me, for example, if like you're trailing a suspect, how that interaction goes because you failed or succeeded, something like that.
Okay.
All right. So do you have any questions on that? I know it's a lot of download to do.
No, that makes sense. No, the rules seem like they make enough sense.
Okay. So now I'm going to read one other thing to you, just to kind of give you an idea, is that there is something called, let's see, handout for new role players. Nope. How to solve a case. So I know that investigation games, we played a few investigation games, but I can't say that they're necessarily our cup of tea. So this is at least some suggestions. I'm just going to read you the top level bullet points as to what it means, and just so you can kind of get an idea, because it's already talked a lot about rules and everything. But the first is talk to people. This is a hard boiled genre, so they want you to actually go out and run sources, investigate with people, find those kind of things. This isn't the kind of thing that you can search on the internet for or anything like that. So if you find physical clues, you have to kind of,
that's why you have your contacts. So you have people you can always talk to.
Or you would have to go or you'd have to go find a person that the clue relates to, right?
But what I'm saying is, if you feel like you're in a dead end, you can always go talk to one of your contacts. Correct. They're people that you know.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And they could possibly point you in the right direction. You also need to talk in person. So, like I said before, when you're trying to assess honesty, like it's you can't really use those type of traits over the phone.
Well, I don't think phones are that common in 1937.
Aren't they?
I don't think they're that common still. I think they exist, but I don't think they're that. I think most things are still done in person.
That's fair. They also want you to.
I can send them a telegram. Be the slowest investigation ever.
Candygram. The next one is talk to scary people. Finding out who did bad things means talking to bad people. Sometimes that means a risk, and maybe talking to people that might be, in the belly of the underworld kind of thing. But I mean, that's that hard boiled fiction, right? They go into the club, they get knocked around a little bit. It's the price of asking questions.
Well, yeah, talking to bad people to find bad people. Yeah.
Yeah. Choose your cover stories wisely. This one I thought was an interesting how to solve the case. Is that if you are talking to possibly scary people, you may find it expedient to approach them under false pretenses, which makes sense. But it just means that don't create such a obtuse ruse that you can't actually ask the questions you intend to ask.
How many apple cideries are there in LA?
Not enough, buddy. Not enough. Now the last thing is never assume coincidences. Some elements of a case turn out to mean nothing, but you can't tell which ones until you turn over every nook. So even if something seems outlandish, don't discard it. Maybe just put it to the side so you understand it better in context. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Whew. So now that we've done kind of like an overview as to how to play the game and everything like that, tonight's going to be kind of a light night, just to kind of get into the game, just to kind of give Brent a little bit of a taste test. So the first thing that we're going to do is probably only going to play 1 or 2 scenes tonight, and we're going to kind of see how that goes. And so this is going to be Brent's opportunity to really start making decks his own.
So we're in the middle of the Depression. That was 1929, 1938, or 39.
Like I said, I thought it was on its way down, but I guess probably
Yeah,
not.
we're in the middle of the Depression, and Prohibition ended in 1930. I just looked at it, and I can't remember now.
Yeah. Like, needless to say, organized crime in LA is flourishing.
Prohibition ended in 1933, so we're 4 years out of Prohibition.
Yeah. You can get that bourbon, that whiskey sour, whatever you want to get.
Well, it's just I wanted to make sure I wasn't going somewhere and saying I'm a bootlegger as my cover, and then being like,
"That's fair." That's fair. The importance of the historical significance is really it's really nice. So because it's reality, you can actually check on these real dates. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to be picking a problem. So let me see if I can share this real quick. Let's see if I did this right. There we go. So the problems, and I'm going to share my screen real quick with you. Is you get to choose between 4 initial problems. So why don't you go ahead and I'll read the problems, at least the titles of the problems.
These are like cases, right?
No, they're not cases. They're just personal problems that you, as the hard-boiled detective, has to assume at the start of the game. Now, I believe the phrasing is like you need to take at least one of the problems. So, I mean, past that is, I guess, up to you. I think. But the first problem was what killed the cat. This is a continuity problem, and you'll see that there are sometimes subtitles to it. A continuity problem is a problem that can continue between different investigations. So, problem 1, what killed the cat? Even when you shouldn't look or have no reason to want to know something, you can't not look. You can't stop probing. You worry problems like a terrier worries a rat. Next one is lonely. You should have gotten over her by now. She's gone, and gone for good. It's time you moved on, found somebody new, maybe someone who won't play you for a sap this time. Oh, hell, who are you kidding? Problem 3, broke. Nobody could ever accuse you of loving money. You wouldn't be an honest private eye if that were the case. But a man needs to eat and keep the lights on, and you're on the verge of being evicted from both your apartment and your office. And then you have vice hound. Gambling, whores, the opium pipe. You've kicked all those vices before. So if you slip up a bit and indulge one or more of your compulsions, you can straighten yourself up again. Right?
Let's pick broke. Broke is a pretty it's kind of cliche, but it might be fun to do.
Okay. So I'm gonna post that in Messenger for you, so you can have a copy of that card. So there may be situations in which that card becomes important, just to kind of the narrative. It may influence how a certain scene is played or something like that. So just an FYI as to how those problems can come up. All right. So there's that. Now the next thing is that so you're a private investigator in Los Angeles in the 1930s that is broke. Very fitting for a Depression era individual. So let's talk about Dex, his story. So if you want to read the story to everybody to kind of give an idea as to what Dex's background is, then we're going to kind of customize and give Dex's office a little bit of panache.
All right, so Dex Raymond, hard-boiled Seamus, and his story is archetypical hard-boiled private investigator. Dex Raymond prowls Los Angeles' haunted streets as an outsider by choice. With his smarts and grit, he could have wormed his way into its corrupted power structure. Instead, he operates on its fringes, righting wrongs for a modest fee, plus expenses. In addition to his contacts, he counts one more key friend, LAPD detective Sergeant Ted Garrigan, a rare honest man in town where cops can be bought by the barrel.
Perfect. And so, so speaking about your office and kind of talking about your fortunes a little bit, why don't you describe the kind of office that you have as a private investigator? Do you have like a like a secretary, or do you think that because you're broke, that's probably the first thing that went?
That's probably the first thing that went. So there's probably it's probably is a two-part office. Where I have the area where the secretary usually is, and then I have like my office in back.
Hmm.
But I've probably actually started to just use the front section as my office because I'm sleeping in the back office because I've
Mm,
already lost my apartment.
okay.
Um so yeah, that's how, that's probably where that is.
So
Um,
so
so the front
basically,
office, so the front office looks like professional private eye. That there's a little door that you go through, and it goes into where like there's like a makeshift bed on the floor, and everything's been kind of pushed to the corners.
mm, okay. So you still give a veneer of professionalism, even though like if you just open the door, you'll find it's like,
Right. Other than the rumpled suits, like sometimes slept in sort of
mhm.
suits and stuff like that. Other than that, I try to be as look professional when I think somebody's going to stop in as possible.
Okay, sounds good. And so, what would you say the one thing that stands out um, in your office would be? Do you have any mementos or anything like that you say this is unique to Dex's office? And what would its
Um,
significance be?
There is a painting I got for a client, from a client for solving. Their kid had been kidnapped, and I managed to find the kid before he was hurt, and it gave me a kind of expensive painting that I haven't had the gumption to sell yet.
Hmm.
And plus, art's kind of hard to sell at this time. Like if I would have sold it a couple years ago, it would have been better. But it's kind of hard to sell art during the depression. And it's not a need, so not many people are interested in buying right now.
Okay.
So I kind of just stare at it at night
And
and
do you,
lament the fact that it's worth money, but I can't get any for it.
what is the painting of? Out of curiosity,
It's like an abstract painting. It's mostly like fractal colors and stuff like that.
is it done by a famous artist?
Yes.
Hmm, okay.
I don't know who though. So you can pick a name for that.
Oh, I don't know famous fractal abstract artists
Me
either.
neither,
So
especially not in the 1930s.
we'll figure out. We'll see if we can find an artist that matches the bill.
It may be a made up. I don't know how much Dex knows about the mythos, but it might be semi involved in that. So it might be a made up Lovecraftian painter.
Mm, it could be. It could be. Um, okay, so I would say that this is kind of like it's a day like any other day, kind of sitting at your desk, and I'm curious, like how do you spend your days, especially when you have situations in which maybe you don't have a current case you're working on.
If I have a case if I don't have a case I'm currently on, I usually sleep in, unless somebody calls. And I don't like the door is locked for walk in, so people have to knock to like wake me up first, so they don't just walk into an empty office and start looking for me. So they have
Mhm.
to either ring the doorbell or knock or something, and that'll usually wake me up, and then I'll take a few seconds to get dressed, and then go open the door. On days I'm not on cases, yeah, I usually sleep in. I have a collection of books that I read,
Mhm.
and really have just started reading the same books over again because I can't really afford them. Newspaper, I usually read the newspaper daily. And then whatever like minor meal I can get for myself a day
Okay.
based on my budget,
Sure.
that sort of thing.
So you would say that you're, even though you're broke, would you say you're frugal in terms of your spending and allowance?
I'm frugal because I'm broke. Like I wouldn't be if like I would buy new books and stuff if I could, but I can't
Mhm.
right now.
Gotcha.
I try and make sure that all the bills are paid so I have a place to live and work out of first.
Mhm.
And then at night, I'll probably go down to the local pub or bar and um mostly drink water.
And marinate on a whiskey and water.
But socialize, and that's where I usually meet the detective who's my friend. We'll usually go
Mhm.
there at night.
Gotcha. All right. So since you're since you're kind of like a one man private detective agency at this point, You basically, your office is located in a dingy part of town called Bunker Hill. Now, normally people, I would say that usually you'd have to have a reason to go into Bunker Hill unless you live there. So in the case of Dex, because he lives there, he's not exactly living in the high life of Los Angeles. Now, the one thing that makes today a little bit different than the days previous, and you kind of feel like it's been a few days since you had anybody knock on the door or even a case to really work on. So you know how like you kind of get to that point where your body's just like dreading because you're like, okay, well, I'm starting to get on money. I don't really know if I'm going to be able to keep the office. Like as those things kind of gnaw at your psyche a little bit, um, you do hear the sound of somebody walking down the hallway. Now, just out of curiosity, do you have like a frosted glass window
Mhm.
for your entryway and everything like that?
Yeah, it's a frosted window in the front and says, Raymond Detective Agency.
Okay.
And if it's in the afternoon, I would already have my suit on and I'd be sitting at the desk probably reading my book.
Okay. So yeah, so afternoon, and basically, you hear the sound of probably heels, kind of walking down, kind of a sharp clacking on the wood floors, and then of course, as you see a shadow kind of go up to the door, you can kind of tell that it's probably a female, a feminine shape, and you hear kind of a gentle rap on your window. And of course, they try the door to see if it opens, but because you said it's locked.
Right. Exactly. No,
This is
if I'm sitting there, it's not locked.
okay. So
I get up in the morning and open the office. It's only when I'm like asleep in the morning because I oversleep.
okay, sure.
So yeah, so it's open. So she could come in. So she probably knocked and came in.
Yeah, knocked and then tried the door and kind of opened it. And so like immediately you see that um it, you see a woman step into your office. She's probably in her mid to late 20s, but she's definitely wearing the kind of clothes that you don't normally see in Bunker Hill. Um, when you talk about like the lovely lady, the dame that walks in your office and everything like that. Um, you can see that as she kind of like walks over to your desk, she says, are you Dex Raymond, the private investigator?
Yeah, I'm Dexter Raymond, private detective. Please have a seat. How can I help you?
Okay. Yeah. So you can tell that as she gets closer, she's tall, slender, with curves that suggest trouble. Um, and she goes and she sits in the chair across from you at the desks. And she says, I hope you can help. I have I have a problem that I need a very reliable person to help me with. And I've heard that your reputation on the street is quite good. Now, in in this case, I have a situation with my sister, and I don't think it's something that I would consider a normal type of issue. And she says, and she introduces herself. She says, "My name is Margaret Deacon, and our family has has seen its share of troubles, but my sister Helen, she's in a terrible state right now. 6 weeks ago, she went missing. And it's not that she hasn't gone missing or gone partying or went with friends before. This was different. After she disappeared, it was a couple weeks before she showed back up. We had actually feared the worst. Fortunately, the police found her, and she was wandering downtown. She was wandering the streets late at night, and she was clad only in a blood-stained and dirty camisole and slip. I mean, fortunately, because we had put out a missing persons report on her, that the police had recognized her, and they had brought her to our family again discreetly, as to not cause anything in the tabloids or anything like that. But I don't know what happened to her. She didn't seem to recognize me. She's been mute and nearly catatonic, and we've been giving her the best care that money can buy. And I'm afraid that we've taken too long in this, because I mean it's been several weeks and she hasn't really changed. But since she's not really talking, I need to know who did this. Can you help me find out who did this?
So as she's telling the story, I light up a cigarette and I'm kind of puffing a little bit as I listen to her story. And when she finishes, I ask her, um, I say, "Yeah, I can definitely look into the issue. I can definitely look into the case for you.
Mhm.
You're sure? It sounds like you believe that she was kidnapped. She didn't just wander off or disappear on her own accord. You think she was kidnapped?"
Well, she takes a moment, as you're asking your question. She takes out a case from her clutch, and opens up a cigarette holder and puts a cigarette in herself. And she asks you to light the cigarette for her.
Yeah, I like the cigarette for her.
Now, the one thing that's interesting is that as you get closer, she's definitely a pretty lady. So we're actually going to do what's called a challenge here, Brent. Um, Now the challenge is keeping it professional with Margaret. So as you lean in to light the cigarette and you get a little close and you can smell her fragrance and everything like that, I need you to roll a cool check. So a cool check, you're going to roll 1d6 in this case, because that's the number of dice next to your thing. And I mean, I could tell you what you hope for, but hope for a 4 plus is what you're looking for, I guess. And if you need to, you can gain a problem if you.
I rolled a 5.
Okay. So in this case, you achieved an advance. So you can see, as she leans in, you could see why guys would fall in love with a woman this glamorous and smart. Fortunately for you, you're not one of those guys. So you see that, like her charm and attraction, everything like that doesn't seem to have worked on you necessarily. So you gain an edge. You gain the edge called self-possessed. So let me go ahead and oops. Let me go ahead and put this up so people can see it. 1 second. Yoink. So self-possessed. A show of self-control gives you the confidence you need in this case, if this case gets hairy. Spend for an extra die on a cool or stability, or for a +2 bonus to any other general or mental test. So basically you get this edge as kind of like now if we were playing, I would actually give you a card that you would
Right.
hold on to. And then if a situation came up where you felt that you wanted to spend this edge on that situation, then you would give me the card back and the edge would be spent.
Okay.
So I'm just going to plop it into your messenger. So you kind of have that for your reference. And then we'll proceed. So go on to your question. What was your question?
Oh, I thought you said you were going to answer my question. I basically asked her why she thinks that she was kidnapped, and this wasn't like. So I asked her. She thinks she believes she was kidnapped, not that she disappeared of her own accord.
Well, she suspects that somebody did this to her on purpose, but it's kind of just a hunch at this point. One of the things that she talks about as she goes further into her story is she talks a little bit about her father, and kind of like a little bit of the family history. And the history is that after her mother died, um, her father retired to pursue personal interests. Um, and of course, once that happened, she took over, like she says, she took over the business for her father. But Helen has always been a little bit wild and so of course she's had to take care of the responsibilities, one time and time again. But the reason why she's been a little bit of a wayward child, let's say. She's not shied away from drink, and she's obviously done a few things that she would disapprove of. And this includes the juggling of several men.
So why? But why does she? So she's just told me that she's prone to disappearing in these things.
Mhm.
Why does she think somebody did this to her if she's prone to having these things sort of happen? Like, why does she think somebody did this to her? There has to be either a suspect or a reason that she thinks this was done to her instead of something that she did or an accident.
Sure. She says that based on the previous times, I mean, it would just be a long weekend. It was never 2 weeks, because obviously Helen doesn't have her own money. She has our money that we dispense to her like an allowance. So the fact that she was gone for 2 weeks, and she came back wandering downtown, pretty beat up, in a in bloody night clothes. That's what she took as probably the reason why somebody was responsible for this.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So she thinks something happened. She doesn't think that based on prior times that she was gone, she doesn't think that this was just an accident that happened while she was off.
Mm-mm.
And if it was, she wants to find out what the accident was, I assume.
Yeah, specific. I mean, she wants to know if the person that was responsible for this. She wants to know who it is, so she can take care of it.
What I'm saying is what if it's not somebody that's responsible? What if I
Oh,
find
well,
out
then,
it was
then
it
if
was an
nobody's
accident?
responsible, then she's fine with just knowing what happened.
Okay, that's what I'm saying is she wants to know what happened if through the course of my investigation I determined that she did something, it was an accident or something of that
Mhm.
nature, she still wants to know.
Mhm.
Okay. I tell her, "Yep, I'm more than happy to take the case and look into it for her. I will need $15 a day plus expenses." I think
Okay.
that's a lot.
She doesn't bat an eye. She says, "That sounds reasonable."
The cigarette shakes in my fingers, and
Yep.
I say, "Good, agreed. Sounds good."
Do you have any other questions for him?
What interests did so she said that her father pursued personal interests. What personal interests?
Um, she says that she talks a little bit about how he's taken to a little bit of gambling and a little bit of drink. Um, Probably, obviously, more than Margaret likes, because the way that she describes it. Um, you can tell that she's disapproving of her father's choices after retirement.
Okay. And what exactly is the business that she took over from her father?
So you actually know this family through your own knowledge of just kind of like the landscape of LA.
Oh, okay.
Is that Margaret Deacon? She runs the day to day operations for what her father's real estate development firm. They're still doing well in terms of in terms of old money families at this point. They're very much in the wealthier crust of the LA elite.
Okay.
And personally that she's a tough cookie that kind of uses everyone's kind of sexism against that, because people think she's young and a woman, that she's gullible and easy to take advantage of, and many people that are trying to do that approach find out on the rough end that that's not how it works.
Okay.
Word is on the street.
Yep. And so the other thing I do is I slide a notepad over and I ask for her sister's known acquaintances, like the boyfriends that she said she had, any friends that she might go partying with, just if she can write their names down. And then as I see their names, I kind of ask her questions about them.
She's like, okay, well, I don't know. Unfortunately, we our relationship has been a little bit strained, and she stopped confiding as much in me as she used to. But there is one man. His name is Marshall Daly. He works I think he writes over at Capitol Pictures, and I mean, I really only met him a few times. He was handsome, but he kind of also seemed a little angry and probably the jealous type. And that reminds me, what was this? What was that? What was that group called? She says that another thing that kind of reminded me of is that when their mother became ill, this is kind of where everything started to go sour in our relationship, is that Helen started talking all this nonsense about auras and secret masters and pyramids and crystals and you name it. But I mean, all that seemed to be oh gosh, what was it? I just remember her saying the phrase "ard argent light" or something like that. I don't really know what that is, but I mean, it seemed like she had made some friends in this new wave religion stuff, and I don't know. It seemed like it didn't see. It seemed harmless enough at the time, but
Okay. So I make note of Argent Light and Marshall Daly's name. I do ask her, any friends? Do you know anywhere that she hung out? Do you have any idea what she was doing when she disappeared?
uh,
When was the last time, like when you give her her allowance? I'm gonna go ahead and call it allowance. Does she come and get it from you personally, or does you send somebody to do that for you?
uh, and she's like, I mean, I hate to say this, but it kind of we talked so little that I can't really say where she was going and all of those kinds of where I can't say exactly where she was going. I just know that she seemed like she went to the type of places that you could get a good drink. That's about as much as I know. And honestly, we weren't even talking. I wasn't even giving her allowance directly or anything like that. She would usually have it set aside and come pick it up when she needed it. And that's how I could always count on her coming home. So
Okay. Do you know where she's staying?
right now,
Or
she
where she was staying before she
oh she
2
was she
questions, sorry. Where she was staying before she disappeared, and now where she's staying now.
she was staying at the family house, and she's at the family house now. And so
Okay.
she's currently got a live-in nurse in hopes that we can see her improve. Um,
Do you stay at the family house then, or
mhm,
are you on?
yep. It's so the me, Helen, our father, and a few servants live in the manor. But honestly, as big as the house is, we don't even see that much time. We don't even see each other that often.
Okay. Was she close with any other servants? Butler, maid?
Not particularly.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's all the questions. I think that's all the questions I have for now. Do you have a way I can I do ask for the address of the family home just in
Mhm.
case I have any questions. I can swing by and ask her some more questions. I may also swing by just to see kind of the state that your sister in and maybe some of her possessions, if may help the case as well.
Well, so I don't know if you need to see her because I mean, it may just cause her to go into one of her fits. Um, but it, she's been pretty out of it. Although I do have the camisole that Helen was wearing when she reappeared. So if you'd prefer, I can have that delivered to your office or something
Yeah,
like
you can have it delivered to the office.
that. Okay. All right. So
Actually, what I tell her is you can have it delivered to this address. And what I do is I actually give her Virginia uh, Ashbury's address because
hmm,
she's who I'm probably going to take it to anyways. So I just
okay.
tell her to have it delivered to that address.
Okay. Um, okay. Um, sure. So yeah, she says she takes the information down, and she of course leaves. And her address, her phone, and other important contact information with you.
Yeah.
And she pays you for a few days up front, just cash out of her purse kind of thing.
And I do give her my card with a phone number on it. I do still have a phone. It just doesn't always get answered. So
And you don't have anybody to take messages, so it's
exactly,
just rings and rings and rings.
exactly.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, so that's the first scene, and that we would kind of like. She obviously thanks you for your time and walks out, and that concludes the scene. So,
No, what concludes the scene is me doing a little dance that I have money.
I'm not broke, as broke. Well,
Right.
you probably have to spend some of that money catching up on some things that may be a little bit close.
Indeed, I have to pay for the office and stuff, but still, that's
Yeah.
better than nothing.
You have enough money to buy drinks tonight if you wanted to. At least one.
Or just not, or food, or pay for the office.
One of the things you get to choose one. So yeah, so that's the scene. I thought we'd just, like I said, get through one or two scenes tonight just to kind of get a test of it. Um, seems pretty much like every other investigation game so far.
Yeah, seems pretty good so far.
Yeah.
Trying to
Okay.
concentrate on asking good questions because I know that's more important in this game.
Yeah, and I think that I think it kind of gives you an idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to send you like the list of investigative abilities and stuff, so
Mhm.
that you can have a reference point. I think that's really helpful for you to be able to know like how these different investigation abilities like operate. And then I think what we'll do is where do you think you're going to pursue your leads next time?
The first thing that I will do is I will probably wait until this evening when I'm having drinks with my detective friend, and I'll probably ask him questions about the case or anything that he knows.
Hmm.
Um, and then from there, I'm gonna go talk to Virginia about the package that she got that she isn't expecting.
Not going
And
to call
then
her or anything.
no, I have to go talk to her. I'm gonna go talk to her that the next day because I think it'll take her a day or two to get it anyways. And then after that, it'll be go talk to um Madam Eva about if she knows anything about Argent Light or anything like that, and see if I can pick up some names to go from there.
Okay. Sure.
And then eventually, I'll go talk to uh, Marshall Daly and ask him some questions about Helen.
Okay. And so the interesting thing about running sources and everything like that, those tend to be considered side conversations. You don't when we run sources, we don't tend to run them in the middle of a scene. Usually you run them in between scenes. And so so exactly as we're doing right here. But sometimes the temptation might be like, oh, let me get that to Virginia. And you're like, don't ask all your questions before jetting out of there because you're like, I've got a piece of evidence.
Oh no, I'll try and ask all the questions of the person
Yeah.
the person before I leave.
So just a heads up as to one of the pitfalls that people commonly run into, I guess. Like apparently, they'd go and be like evidence, and a little smoke screen, where the GMPC is just standing there like, I have more clues.
Yeah,
Possibly.
I'll try and remember to ask all my questions before I leave a scene.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of each scene as a separate thing that
Mhm.
needs to have a beginning and end. So like you can't just go back to it or do a flashback or something. So
Yep.
I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, and it's and there's probably something like that you can do it, but I mean you could just revisit a scene if you need to. You can just revisit somebody if
Right,
you
you can
want
just
to.
go back to them. That's what I'm trying to think. If anything comes up that I have more questions about, I'm gonna
Yeah.
assume Dexter didn't think of them and he'll have to go talk to them.
And that's exactly how the detectives do it. They go, "Oh, I have new information. I have to go
Mhm.
revisit this, suspect or scene to investigate it in a different light and all that kind of stuff."
Right.
So cool. Well, I'm excited. I think that went
Yeah, it
pretty
was fun.
well.
It was fun. I
Um,
like it.
you know, opening first scene, I think that was just like a nice like palette
Yeah, it was nice.
cleanser.
It's a good way to start. It's more like a appetizer. I think
Uh,
it's more like what you
What is it?
wanted.
What is that word that mosh bouche, the one
Yeah,
bite?
amuse bouche. Yeah.
There's some cooking terms.
A palate cleanser is more in the middle or the end of a meal.
Whatever. I'm just throwing culinary words out there because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Appetizer would be the start of the meal.
I don't know. Whatever. You normal people and how you eat. I start with the palate cleanser first because I want my meal to taste good. Who doesn't clean their palate before they get started? I thought everybody did.
He also drinks hand sanitizer, ladies and gentlemen, to clean his palate.
I
I
prefer ginger. I don't know. Is coffee a palate cleanser?
No, it is not a palate cleanser at all. Coffee's bad for your palate, actually.
Okay, whatever.
Palate cleansers are soft flavors, not strong flavors like coffee or hand sanitizer.
Well, nobody's drinking hand sanitizer to cleanse the palate.
That's probably true.
Okay, so I think that's where I wanted to wrap it up, kind of keep it light. I think so. So in terms of like gameplay length, just for people that are thinking about playing the Fathomless Sleep, it really depends on your one-on-one interaction with somebody and how much of a through line they make through the investigation. Because obviously this is a set story, you know.
He means how many red herrings I take that take me way off the path, and then I have to correct at some point.
That is absolutely correct. Like it because there is a possibility. They say that some people like buzzed through this like in like 3 to 4 hours, and other people were like 9 to 10. Because you can really, I mean, you can really dive deep. I mean, this kind of game, I think, based on my initial impression, is really, really flexible for the style of play that you want to have. You can have the hard boiled, like I get out my, you know, my hat and my trench coat and I sit across from the GM and I actually get in character as much as I want, you know, and talk in the voices and all that kind of stuff. Or you could do it kind of like, you know, summary style, you know, where you go in there. Or you can even go even more meta and be like, well, I'm going to use my assess truth, you know, assess honesty, you know, like you have different layers to it. And I think the more you play it, the more comfortable you'll be kind of drawing upon those and all that stuff. It's a neat system. I really like its simplicity.
Yeah, that was an enjoyable first scene. Although you need to sharpen up on your description of dames, as I think they say in most.
Well, it's like I didn't want to get too. It's like I didn't want to get too like, oh, her curves could kill, and she has a.
I know.
She has a tilted hat, and I mean, I think that's what they have. Like they have the tilted hats. Yeah, I'll get it. I'll do better next time. How about that?
I'm kidding more than anything. I probably would have done the same thing. So
yeah, it's okay. I'll do better. So okay, well that's it. I don't see any questions. So I think if everybody enjoyed listening to this, you know, just had us on in the background, that's awesome. You know, if you're listening to this and it's the recording, hop into the comments. How did it go? Did I miss anything? This is my first time playing through this, and since we're definitely the average table and not professional gamers, we're okay with feedback, constructive and otherwise. So
yeah, and if you have any detective shows that you would suggest for Mike or myself to watch, to sharpen up on
so
the genre, please let us know.
So I get better at describing the dame walking into the office.
Yeah.
So, alrighty, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.